Hello and welcome to this episode of Without Limits podcast. I'm sat here with Ollie Marchon and Jenz Robinson, co-owner of the Gym Owners Network, the PFCA, and a lot of things Marchon, to talk through some points that came up recently at an event they both threw for gym owners, high-performing gym owners, which is actually what brought this episode to life. So in true Without Limits fashion, I'll start by asking you, Jenz, what does Without Limits mean to you?
Firstly, it's really cool to be here. Sit opposite my good friend, my business partner, and someone I hold the highest level of respect for. I think when it comes to Without Limits, it's changed over the years. So Ollie and I have trained together pretty much most days since 2018. But Without Limits has almost been this thing that as you push a limit that you may have imposed on yourself, what Marchon allows is like a realization that that was a glass ceiling and that there's another level and there's always another level. And actually what that other level looks like is like a reflection on who you once thought you were was actually no one compared to who you're trying to be. And Without Limits, therefore, is just like just a realization that you can re-identify yourself and you can almost become a phoenix over and over and over again, which looks like burn the hell out of whoever you thought you were and go again and go again and go again. And what that's allowed within the whole ecosystem of Marchon is largely the community of, if you don't do it today, someone else is doing it. So you better fucking do it as well because there's a target on your back. And that's what I love. Is that like, I'll never let him down. He'll never let me down. And we'll never want to let anyone else down. So it's like this weird competitive but not competitive showing up. So Without Limits is rebirth, it's reimagining yourself, it's pushing your limits, and it's competition. That's what it is.
Fantastic. The reason that I think this is so good is because this will allow people to see behind the scenes of what Ollie talks about, what Marchon talks about, and the whole Without Limits thing. You might see it as a hashtag on an Instagram post, but you guys live it every single day. One thing that we're going to start with from these points of high performance, which fits really nicely into what you were talking about, and when you hear the term in the office a lot of someone's coming for your jersey, but this point is kill your clone. So I'm smiling saying this, and you probably explain why. What does that mean? And what has that sort of given you both over the last 6 to 8 months?
I'll go first. Jen's used the term there, the ability to rebirth. So I think this notion of recreating yourself is really important to us. And it's something that as we've gone through different stages of our lives, be it as athletes, rugby players, now into business, into taking a business from a few employees to 10 employees to multiple employees, different revenue targets, the problems that you face at every stage of business or every stage of life as a parent, whatever it may be, you have to continually recreate yourself. And if we think about that 24-hour clock that we have from the moment we wake up to the moment our head hits the pillow, it's the ability to recreate yourself better than the person that was there yesterday. And I think if we put these limits on ourselves, particularly as we age, like there's certain things that are going to be taken away from us potentially as we age, just part of the process. But if you're continually trying to have your best days as something ahead of you, then you've always got something to aim towards and always got something to show up for and push towards. I often, when I take the steps, for example, I'm not just taking it to keep my knee up. I take the steps because one day I won't be able to take the steps. So it's like if I practice taking the steps every day, that means that hopefully I can delay the fact that, or delay the point in which I can't take that first step on that step of stairs when I'm going on the subway or whatever, or on the underground, whatever it may be. So I think it's just, this notion of recreating yourself better than the person you were yesterday. And the fact that the person who you were yesterday was the best version of yourself. So can you become better than that person? Can you beat him? Because if you are, you're continually growing, and therefore the aging process and everything else that life's going to throw at you means that you are a better person that day.
Yeah, I love that. Just to add to it, so if you ever dive into like mindset coaching, you get a mindset coach, one of the things is they'll try and get you to practice gratitude, right? And where that's like distilled is then, people go and, thank you for my water, thank you for the food on my plate, thank you for the roof over my head, all of which we need to acknowledge. But at the end of your day, those things, when you look back at the wins, they aren't really stacking in line with who you're trying to become, right? And that's where like there's always a mismatch. So this kill your clone thing, what it ended up doing was actually bringing to light how many little challenges happen each day, each moment, where you're always faced with the decision. And you can either go left or you can go right. What the kill your clone thing is like, actually, there's two of us. There's the best version of me, and there's a version who's better than me. And I can either beat this person, but I'm going to have to step up, or he's going to win, right? And it was with every little decision, whether it's hitting snooze in the morning, whether it's one food choice over the other, whether it's train or not, whether it's eat this or eat that, whether it's be prepared for this, be prepared for that. And it almost went down to everything at a stage when I got really hyper obsessive about it, from like how I reacted to my kids pissing me off. Like my gut wants to maybe scream, but I'm like, my clone who's better than me, he's totally chilled in this scenario. So I'm like, fuck you, I'm going to beat you. All the way down to like how I spend time with my wife. At the end of the day, when you're tired and wife wants you to spend time with her and you're like, oh, you know, I'm knackered. But I'm like, my clone's got his arm around my wife. Do you know what I mean? It's like, fuck you. And that's what it ended up being. And what it ended up showing is actually there's so many opportunities for wins every day, where in normal mindset practice, you look at the end of the day and you try and grasp on, where's my wins for the day? Like, because you're looking for all these big things, like I close this deal, or I close this client, or I hit this PB. Life isn't like that. It's not these big things each day. It's all these tiny little decisions that if you choose hard in those little moments, they all stack up, and your clone would have done it anyway. So you better beat that guy.
It also, at the very sort of base sense, it's just hard choice, easy choice. And I think what it also allows is the competition to only be about yourself, only be about your best self, which I think in this day and age where everyone's worrying about what other people are doing and you know, getting caught up on things they see on social media or think people around them, it's just, can you be better than yourself? The reality is that everyone out there wants you to do well, but they only want you to do 5 or 10% better than what you're currently doing. But if you can just measure your yardstick against who your previous self was, then you can get infinitely better based on the decisions that you make. And if you compound those little decisions of hard every time, you become way more resilient, you become way more proactive in going out and getting what you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, you just wrapped it up how I kind of wanted to finish that section. And I was going to ask, how much value do you think there is in measuring yourself against yourself rather than what's out there? Because we live in an age, obviously, where it's accessible to see what everyone's doing. So the best of the best are probably going to be shown to you more than everything else, just because of virality, all that sort of thing. And it's quite damaging for people to strive to be at that top level when really they can challenge themselves against themselves. How much value do you think is there in that, rather than looking at motivation and inspiration above them?
I think it's fed to you, as you said. It's very easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to other people, and I would be lying if I said that I don't do it. But I think the only thing that you can truly control is your performance against your previous self. It's the only thing that you genuinely have control over. All your decisions, what goes on in your internal dialogue, and how you then act on those things, and then your actions and behaviours each day. So, I think it's natural with the inputs now that we're fed all the time to compare yourself. But I think if you can really try and internalise every decision and just try and beat the person that you were, not to a point where it becomes too destructive. You know, I think myself and Jenz were very much, when you were in that period, like some decisions are, you know, they're towing the line of being like maybe hyper obsessive. But I also think that's sometimes what you need to do to break through plateaus in, whether it's changing your physique, changing your mindset towards something, changing your habits and behaviours around things that really are going to be, you know, push the needle forward. But yeah, I don't think you need to, you know, be on all the time. You need to show yourself some compassion. But I think we got to a stage where we were being fed so much compassion, and everything was about compassion. Everyone wants to, you know, give themselves hugs and sing Kumbaya by the time they get to bed. But that's not what's
fuck compassion, we said.
Yeah, we used to say fuck compassion. That's not going to change the world, right? And you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's who we are, and the dreams and ambitions that we have as individuals, as you know, people who are still competitive in the athletic space as well as in business, as well with our family and with each other. We need to adopt a different mindset.
I think the big thing with the fuck compassion thing was, it was easy to stack up excuses, and in the world today, that's kind of what's been accepted as a norm. And very, very few people are actually as overachieving as maybe Ollie, who actually might need a little bit more compassion for himself. But most people, they just need a slap across the face and go and do the fucking thing. And that's where we kind of came up with this thing of like the anti-compassion compassion club. And it was just like, stop giving yourself excuses to be like, oh, it's okay, you had a rough night with, with Mila, don't do this. Or, oh, Ruby's not sleeping at the moment, it's okay, you can eat that. And that compassionate, acceptable norm was becoming the thing that was holding us back, which then goes back to the hard choice, easy choice. By actually accepting all those compassionate things, everything was just getting easy. And then the gratification you were looking for at the end wasn't there, because you were just going for this easy, short-term gratification stuff. So anti-compassion compassion club became a thing, and it allowed us to just make harder choices, which is then stacks according to who you're trying to become, burn down the old identity.
So then, just to speak on that other side of towing that line, when it does get a bit too much, or you don't meet the expectation that you've made of yourself, that can be quite difficult, right? Because you're not comparing yourself to someone that's out of reach. It's something that you've done previously. How did you deal with? There were times, obviously, where you didn't meet the expectations that you'd set for yourself. What was it like dealing with that?
I think the biggest thing, which I love, is when you put your head on the pillow at night and you go, I did everything I said I was going to do that day, versus not. And the things that like cause me the greatest anxiety is the things that I didn't do. And no one knows. Like, it's just between me and me. But I'm like, should have done that, or could have done that, or if I just did that one thing better. And I think there's joy, but there's also harm in that. I'm someone who over expects a lot of things from myself. So there's almost been like a skill to learn a pace that is uncomfortable, but not necessarily overbearing. I mean, the boys joke and say I'm the best at throwing myself over a cliff, like going full kamikaze. But it's that internal dialogue, because even though you compare yourself to others or whatever, most of the time, most people are so self-obsessed with whatever's going on inside their heads. So it's just having a much more honest conversation within their dialogue.
I think the ability to toe the line is a skill, and one that many people just don't lean into enough. And so I think sometimes your biggest competitive downfall can also be, your biggest competitive advantage can also be your downfall. But so long as the downfall isn't so drastic as you can't get back up and dust yourself off, which 9.5 times out of 10 you can, it's where you want to try and be. You know, and through every time that you do go that one step too far, it's a learning situation, and then you know for next time.
Yeah, fantastic. This one I'm really interested to sort of hear both sides of how you think this could be positive, this could be negative, and what's going to benefit people. Because I've obviously spent a lot of time with both of you, and this will make sense when I read it out. So become hyper-obsessive, do not be outworked. So there's been many occasions where we've been traveling as a 3. We've got off an 11, 12, 13-hour flight. I'm absolutely knackered because I haven't slept the night before. You're both knackered, but still I get woken up at 6 a.m. and you guys have done a 10-mile run, spent half an hour in the gym, and you're ready to go. So you guys speak it and do it. What does the whole philosophy of the hyper-obsessive nature and not being outworked mean to you, and how can people use that in everyday life?
Yeah, this is a great one. So just to give further context there, so as you sort of pre-frame the conversation, Jenz was on stage talking to a group of business owners around the mindset piece, right? So before we get into the technical and the tactical bits of life or whatever you're trying to achieve, you have to program the mind, right, for to be in line with the person that you're trying to become. And I think this one is, for some people, it can seem a little bit too far-fetched, but it's something that is built over time. So in being hyper-obsessive, in the very early days, you're hyper-obsessive over things that don't particularly take too much energy or thought to be able to do them. But then it's like anything. As your capacity begins to grow, the things that you need to be hyper-obsessive over and your behaviors need to become more extreme. So for us, 10, 15 years down the line, a long flight and then going into a workout and a run for you seems a bit too extreme, right? Because you're just not there yet. Whereas there's certain things that you maybe do that you obsess over in your line of work that for me I can't relate to. So I'm just sort of pre-framing that to say that like all of those things are learned behaviors that have been built up over a 10-year career of doing this sort of thing. So for us, it becomes a bit second nature. But they're the things that we attach our identity to that allows us to be out in front and not be outworked. And Jenz talks a lot about paying himself first, or you're paying yourself first, which I believe might be on your list, so I won't spoil that too much, but that's where it all starts. It's on those things that you wake up, you do something hard, you do something that is hard, that is going to then serve the rest of your day, your clarity of thought, both mentally, physically, make you ready.
I think to add to that, the hyper-obsessive nature is largely... So, to give more context, Ollie and I will never not, like, if there's something we don't know, we will lean into finding out what is that about, who do we need to learn from, what do we need to buy, what course do we need to do to actually uncover that. And education and like growth is one of my like biggest like obsessions in itself. But let's say, for example, I don't know, it's email marketing and I don't know enough about it. I'll go and learn everything I can. The one thing I actually dislike in other people, and this is a me thing, I totally get it, but like, if you don't understand something, why are you letting it go so long for you not to understand something? Get obsessed about figuring out what that thing is. With like YouTube and everything right now, there's so much you can get. So the hyper obsessive nature is it's just leaning into not being outsmarted or outworked, and not having an excuse for why you couldn't control the result. So that's the whole thing. So like, for example, starting the day on your terms is more like me controlling the likely result of me winning that day.
So the reference of like the email marketing, do you think people look at challenges and things that they don't know about and shy away from them, whereas you see them as opportunities to add new skills? And
Always.
I think the phrase is cliche, but hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. That's always resonated with me.
Me too.
I think it's very fair to say that myself and Jenz punch well above our weight in business and in our athletic. Like, we're obviously very like physically capable, but at both being a push towards 5'10", and for our respective positions on a rugby field, we would have punched well above our weight because the tenacity and work rate in training and on the field, that's just who we are. So I think those life lessons as well will play how we would have played into our business careers as well. But it's always about trying to overstretch the resource that you have, and the fundamental being hard work. Because where you lack talent, you have to make up for it somewhere else. Otherwise, you're just ignorant to the situation and you just get left behind, which isn't acceptable here.
I've always loved that. I've always loved that phrase. Something that's spoken to me my whole life.
Yeah, and same with me. I think people sometimes see it and be like, yeah, this kind of sounds cool, but like genuinely, when you're not gifted naturally with an abundance of talent, both physically or with your skill level or whatever, or even just in your mental capacity, then you have to rely on hard work, because that is one thing that you can control.
Do you remember, like, I imagine you were the same then. Like, I would stay after practice for hours just practicing like my lineouts, my darts.
Well, I remember very early on in my teenage years just being told you're too small to play professional rugby. That sort of when you get towards the years when you start to mature, 15, 16 and beyond, like I went to England trials and they said you're too small to play in the centre. So I was like, fuck, I can't really do much about my size other than go to the gym and eat and do what the things I can control, but I'm just going to fucking work harder than that centre that's 6 foot and 15 stone.
And do you think in terms of the work ethic for individuals that maybe haven't found their purpose, or they've got the drive but they don't know where to channel it, what sort of things would you say? So you guys found early on in athletics what you wanted to do, and then it turned into business where you could hone in that drive and that work ethic. But if someone's listening now and they're listening to the mindset piece of working harder than everyone else, but they're not sure where to sort of channel that energy, what sort of advice would you give? Tough question, but...
I'll start. I think first things first is physical challenge. So make sure you're training, make sure you're doing something. I imagine if you're listening to this, you're in or somewhat in with the Marchon training vibes, but if you're not, you should be, because that's where it starts. Do some hard shit every day. Start to change the narrative that you tell yourself that you can actually do some hard things and overcome them. And then you in your workplace, if you're employed or you're thinking about starting a business, whatever, just go, what's the greatest amount of value that I can provide in my current situation? What can I do beyond my job spec where I can actually create evidence to suggest that I am more valuable than how people see me? That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think if people truly haven't found their passion yet, because it's obvious that we're very passionate about what we do, same as you and the people that are within the company. If you haven't found your passion yet, then there's some exploration to be done. But needless to say, you're still doing stuff every day. And I think whatever we do, you do it to the best of your ability. You know, we talk about how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I think that's something with every job I ever had, even at 14, washing dishes. But I always say, like, I'd fucking clean a toilet better than someone else. You just got to hold the standard with everything you do. So I think if you do that, then those behaviours that you're going to learn doing tasks that you might not necessarily get that fire burning inside of you, but you're developing skills and a work ethic that then can be transferable when you find the thing.
Amazing. The next one, these are all following a very similar theme, which is nice. So every day is ground zero. So similar to kind of the reset mindset of like, today's a new opportunity, the whole kill your clone thing. I've finished a day where I've hit all my expectations. Now it's time to do it all over again. Where does that sit with you guys?
For me, I mean, it might have different sort of permutations for both of us, but for me, I think I struggle to look too far into the future. Jenz will often, remind me what we're doing on a Friday on Monday, and I don't necessarily have things in my diary because it doesn't really resonate. So for me, just the next day is my opportunity. And I think sometimes with the plans and the vision that we all have, if I think too much about those big plans that are happening later down the line, like I can get a little bit anxious about those things, but I can have utter confidence that I'll wake up the next day and just attack that day with everything that I have. So for me, it's just resetting the clock. Like I say, head goes down, you fall asleep. When you wake up, it's what can you do in that day to make sure that you earn your pillow in the evening, but you've moved the needle as far as forward. And I can have utter confidence in myself each day that I can keep getting a little bit better, rather than worrying about I'm trying to create this company that's does X, Y, and Z and has this level of scale. I don't know how to get there yet. Well, I know how to get to tomorrow. I know that tomorrow I just need to be better than it was today. So therefore, if I keep stacking those, then hopefully good stuff will begin to happen.
Yeah, for me, aligned with that, but also kind of fed through sport and just through my story as well, where in sport, we used to always say 0-0. So no matter what the scoreboard was, no matter how much we were winning by, we'd always say 0-0. And that is, let's say you're winning by 15 points, you could technically switch off. But if you do, the whole thing will change. But if you keep it as if like the game's just started, you stay into the game plan, then everything just falls in line. So that 0-0 mindset is that ground zero thing. And then the other thing is, over the years, anytime that I've allowed my ego to get ahead of myself, it comes back to bite me, right? Whether it's a mindset towards I deserve something, expectation, whatever, but whatever that looks like, it's because I've got ahead of myself rather than just going, to Ollie's point, the only thing you can control is like your inputs today. So the 0-0 thing or the ground zero thing is like, what's the game plan today? Everything else doesn't matter.
I'll probably butcher the quote, but there was and again, the situation I'm not 100% sure on, but there was essentially in the NBA Finals, I believe that the Lakers were up 4 games. I don't know if you've seen this video of LeBron James speaking. Anyway, he didn't look exactly happy about it, and a reporter said to him, you've won 4 games. I believe they had to have the 7 to win the title. They said, why aren't you happy? And he said, well, the game's not finished. We've still got 3 more games. So it's that kind of mindset of like, the game's not finished. Like, we're not done with it yet, which is a really nice thing. And especially for the everyday person to relate that back to how they can use that, it's kind of like a new opportunity, right? So even if things don't go well, it's not a thing to beat yourself up about. You've actually got a new opportunity the next day to start it all over again.
Yeah, I think if we distill it down to like everyday things that people are trying to achieve, like losing 5 kilos, for example. Again, this isn't anything groundbreaking, but it's like you just got to lose 1 kilo 5 times. So you just chunk things down into things that seem a little bit more manageable. And like I said, that's like everyone's going to have their different version of that, what that might look like for what they're trying to achieve with, building a relationship with a loved one, or having a relationship with your kid, building a business, trying to get into the team, or whatever it may be from a fitness perspective. But each day, like we said, I mean, the last 5 points have all kind of had the same kind of underlying tone. It's just like one day as it comes, show up, be your best, and just reset the scoreline every time, and then try and win by the close of play that day.
Yeah, if you think about it, like so many people wait until New Year's resolution and then they go, this is my thing. And then let's say it lasts 6 weeks, 2 months, and then it doesn't. And then they think that that's the whole year written off until the next New Year's resolution. Our belief is like, the moment you put your head on the pillow, the next day is a completely new day. You can literally have a New Year's resolution again tomorrow and just like get in line with that new identity. So it's the fact that like you can always start again and you can always start afresh and you can always change the outcome.
Amazing. So the next one follows a little bit of a different path, which is nice. The statement is, the more you invest in your business, the more you respect it. Would you say that's the same for life in terms of the respect you have for yourself and what you can invest in yourself to get more out of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a poor example, but I'll give it because it's relevant. We invest a hell of a lot of money in our business, but also in ourselves. So I'm plugging a company called Simprove here, but it's just the top of mind. So I subscribe to Simprove, which is like a gut health drink. £49.99 a month, by the way. Bring it home, and Lauren's like, I really want to try that. So now, of course, the subscription that I'm on isn't going to last me a month, so I now have to do another one. So I'm now 100 quid deep with this Simprove thing. But I said to her, like, how is it? How are you finding it? She was like, I really think it's making a massive difference. She's like, it's cleared up all my skin issues. I'm feeling really good about myself and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, fuck. That's actually quite a big investment for this little shot glass that you take each morning, 50 quid, like particularly on top of everything else that you got going on. But it's just that mindset of like, the more you invest into something, the more you begin to value it. And what you do value, you should be spending the most money on. And it was something that we were trying to get across to our gym owners, that like, when you invest into something, you start to respect it a little bit more. You just need to make sure that things you're investing in are in line with who you're trying to become and what you're trying to achieve. I think that example kind of works, but it's just always been something that I've been very fond of. Like the things that I genuinely hold of value to me, like I will spend every penny that I have, usually food and fitness and my health, because that's what I respect the most.
This quote was kind of fed by a conversation that we had with an associate that we work with, and he is in the fitness industry, but he's never really he works within the fitness industry, but he's never really gone into proper training, like proper coach-led fitness. He's always done like cheap fitness, fast food fitness, maybe going to a commercial gym on his own. And he invested into a small group facility where the membership's upward of £350 a month. And he was like, I've never paid this much for fitness, but I've also never respected it as much as I do now. And that's kind of what fed this quote. To the point, to what Ollie's making as well, is if you care about something, you need to put enough skin in the game that it means that you don't waste it. Because far too many people say they're spending money on things like fitness, whatever, but they're doing it at a level that doesn't make them respected enough. And that's the big thing.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, the next one feeds into this one point. So only take advice from people playing the game. So similar to what you're talking about, if you look at the people that are spending the money on the things that they're interested in and you're interested in, and respecting the individuals that are in the game and doing the thing, how much value is there in terms of picking and choosing the people that you're listening to?
That quote's actually not fully finished. So it's only take advice from people playing the game. There's loads of people talking shit on the internet. That's the quote.
There's loads of people talking shit from the sidelines. Yeah. I think this is probably more a dig at some of our peer group in the industry. I think when it comes to like picking those people that you want to take inspiration from and follow and remember this, that we discussed earlier, there's a lot of inputs from all different angles that can start to paint a picture in your head that might actually not be in line with what you want to try and do, but also some of those people are charlatans and not actually, there's no substance behind that. So I think whatever you're trying to achieve, there's obviously people you're going to look towards, idolize, take inspiration from, and try and emulate some of their behaviors. Just make sure that person is credible and they've got some skin in the game and they have a proven track record, because I think otherwise it's very easy for someone to sell you something based on very poor foundations.
I also think a lot of people just follow without any real like filter of like, why am I following this person? What about this person inspires me? What do I value most that this person has that I take inspiration from? You asked a question earlier about comparison. I think if you follow people who inspire you and motivate you to be the better version of yourself, great. That's a great person to have visibility from or of. But if they feed a mindset where you're not good enough, you're never going to be good enough, then I would look to like just get rid and almost audit who you follow and who you look up to a point that's like, it starts within. It's like, what do I value most, and who are the best at that, and use that as inspo.
So when you both now come across new people that you haven't seen before, what sort of like audit is going on in your head before you get on board with following what they're talking about?
How you speak, how you move.
Yeah.
Just that?
Yeah, I mean, literally, we say it all the time. If you're a coach that comes to our seminar or applies for a job, and if you move like shit, you're out, right? It's like, if you don't respect that, that's a big issue. And then the next one is just your communication skills.
It's like that thing of not wanting to eat food from a skinny chef, right?
Yeah.
Similar quote. The next one, again, a similar sort of pretense there. So feet on the ground, eyes on the stars. What does that mean?
You don't know what it means, Sam. I love
Help
this.
me out.
So funnily enough, only recently, Ollie and I mentioned this, and we both were like, oh my word, we used to use, I used to think about this when I was like 14, 15. And me and one of my best mates back in South Africa, we did everything together, trained together, played rugby together, like unlocked all the levels in sport together. And this was a quote that we lived by. And it wasn't until recently that came up, and Ollie and I were like, oh shit. Like Ollie thought the same, and we were like, oh, that's so cool. But basically what it means is aim for the stars. Like aim for that scares you. It's audacious. It gets the best out of you. But at no point do you want to leave the floor and forget where you come from. Remember who got you there. Remember what's important to you, and just remain humble. That's my perception of it.
Yeah, same. I think it's just that balance between confidence, like borderline ego, but also humility. Like, you're never the finished article. There's always someone out there doing better with you, doing better than you with less. You know, we talk about that a lot. So it's dream big, but remember that like your feet need to stay on the ground. It's the next step that matters.
Amazing. And in terms of what people look at in what they're dreaming for and shooting for, what sort of advice would you give in terms of creating like a step program that they can follow to do that? Obviously, so many people are trying to sell things these days, give advice, inspiration, etc. If you're the type of person that knows exactly what they want and they've got the work ethic to do it, what sort of things do you think that maybe you failed on in the past that would help someone like that sort of achieve those goals?
I think the biggest thing here is just like how behavioral change works and how to actually change. So far too many people set a goal and they might have the discipline and the fortitude to get there, but then bounce back straight away because they miss this one thing that sits in between. And the big thing that sits in between is the question that we actually asking ourselves and all the team for 2024. It's like, who do you need to become for this to become the byproduct? So the goal isn't actually the goal. The goal becomes the North Star or the lighthouse in which you're aiming toward, but it's all the processes, the actions, the behaviors that mean that this just becomes the byproduct. So there used to be an old Jet Li saying where it was like, you don't get a six-pack by doing these things. You do these things, and then the six-pack becomes you. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, what are those actions that you need to do daily that person would be doing, right? So you got to become the person who would have a six-pack. You need to become that person, and then the rest starts to fall in line. So that's always the biggest thing. It's like, find the goal, whatever it is, but then break it down into, okay, well, if someone, let's say it was something along like your physique, what does that person need to, what does that person do daily for that to be who they are and how they look? What are their behaviors? What time do they wake up? What time do they go to bed? How do they spend their weekends? Who do they hang out with? What do they do in the gym? Are they on the Marchon program? Probably. You know, all these things, right? And it's like, if you're not willing to do all of those things and be that person for the rest of your life, then you're not going to achieve that goal and you're just going to bounce back.
I've literally just written down, become the person that has what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, great quote.
Sam Lopez et al.
I mean, it's you, but I'll rebrand it at some point, I'm sure.
You'll put it on one of my motivational videos on Instagram.
So just to finish that piece off, because you mentioned it at the start, obviously looking towards a North Star or a massive goal is scary. You've both done lots of scary things when it comes to business, whether it's putting all your money into one thing or trying something new is obviously quite scary for a lot of people. Could you just talk about that in terms of the business sense and everything you guys have put on the line to get where you are now, in terms of if people have their goals, they should scare them, right? But what's the overcoming sort of factor for that? How do people get through that scariness to actually go ahead and reach for what they want?
I think I'm reluctant to quote Hormozy here, but he's a G, so let's quote him. I think he often talks about the pain of remaining the same being greater than the pain of doing the new thing. And I think every big decision we made, whether it was moving out of rugby into becoming a full-time coach and becoming a full-time coach into owning my first gym, or breaking up with the ex-girlfriend, whatever it may be, the pain has always been, it's got to that stage where like there's only one logical next step, and it's like do the thing that you've been putting off, or that you think is the right thing. And that then speaks to like the sort of then testing and learning. Like you have to try something to work out whether it's the right thing, and then you learn from that, and then you keep moving forward. So I think every big decision I've ever made is because, like I said, the thought of staying the same, or the situation that I found myself in, becomes one that is like so unbearable that I need to make a change. And the change has been calculated based on, to the best of my knowledge, this is what I think I want, this is what I want to do. I've taken into consideration all the risks, I've taken into consideration all the upside, and the upside seems far outweighs the risks in my current situation, so I'm going to go for it. And then when you jump into that thing, you just then give it everything you've got, in the hope that if you give it everything you've got, then there should be something good the other side.
Yeah, and I would just add, like, most of the time, it's just a learning. Like, if you're in a situation that you know needs to change, just change it. Acknowledge the risks and acknowledge the upside, but know that, like, you're going to learn if you lean into it, and you're going to get better. I said this on my summer holiday recently with the family. I said to the wife, I was like, Jules, I need to go and just have like an old-fashioned whiskey just to like dial my head down a little bit before dinner. So I was sitting down, I was reflecting on the year, and she came to me with the kids. She was like, how was it? And I was like, yeah, good. She's like, you good? I was like, yeah. You know what's cool? How good I am at what I do, and yet how excited I am and how good I'm going to be in 5 years' time. And it wasn't like, I mean, I'm South African, so I'm quite arrogant anyway, but it wasn't like this, like, wasn't this arrogance thing. It was like how far I've come in the last 5 years and how much impact I'm able to make now. And yet it's only going to get better in the next 5. So, and all of those learnings, all those skills came from just making that decision of getting away from pain and leaning into the unknown.
Do you think that the scariness of going and doing something new and trying to reach a goal that you've done has to be achieved for you to be able to like carry on doing those things? In terms of like, if people are listening to this and they've done that scary jump and it hasn't worked out, but the next scary jump could be the one that takes them to where they want to be, what would you say around, because I'm sure you've had lots of situations where that scariness has almost put you off, but it hasn't, and has actually led to something that's been...
I think you kind of just answered it. The fact that they took the jump was the success in itself. The fact that it didn't turn out, you're looking at a short-term outcome. The fact that you went away and you changed the narrative from what most people would just accept as the norm for the rest of their life, the fact that you took the jump is the win. So now you've changed the evidence that you would normally listen to be different, to be contrary, and then you can lean into the next thing. And most businesses fail, right? Most people, I don't know what the stat is, like your first few always fail. Right? It's like, cool, lean into that. What did you learn from that? Okay, you learned that you could back yourself. Great. You learned, don't do that business. Cool. Right. What's the next thing?
Anything to add with that?
Yeah, it's a bit Hormozy-esque too, but I think it's the infinite game thing. It's like, get into a game where you feel as though you can play it forever. And if you're not in a game that you can play forever, like find it, or try and expand the game so that it gives you that opportunity. Again, if I think about like rugby, like it was never going to be the forever thing for me. I got to a stage, an inflection point in my career when like the upside didn't make sense. So I moved into coaching because that had more longevity and that's where my passion lied. But then coaching, then you hit the ceiling. So then it's like, okay, then it was a gym. I'm not saying this is the progression that everyone goes through, but this was my thought process at the time. So then it's a gym, and then it's a team, and then it's a bigger gym, a second gym, and then other things. So I'm constantly trying to expand the game so I can continue playing forever. And I think some people just need to go and do that soul searching a little bit and look at the game that they're currently playing. Is it big enough? Is it scary enough? Is it exciting enough? For some of them, it's just where they need to try. They need to be, to get some sets and reps on that field before they try and expand the game. So, just take into consideration, like, are you still motivated every day to get up and chase something? And is there something there that you can chase? And if not, just try and expand the vision a little bit more and make it a little bit more exciting, a little bit more scary.
And would you say you're now at a point in your career and life where you only want to be doing the scary things rather than the scary things are kind of in the background? And does that make sense in terms of, like, in business, if it doesn't scare you, then you're not interested in it?
I think so, because you become a product of your environment and the people that are around you. Because when you start to multiply different, the same mindsets, like we talked about those words and the connotations as to what they mean for myself and Jenz, and we're very much aligned on those things. But I think if I ask the same questions to you, you come up with some pretty powerful answers just in a different context. So now when you throw in the team and all these people with a similar kind of mindset, which is why I think we have such a strong culture here, it almost gives you confidence to make the dream and the vision that little bit bigger. It's the things equally as scary. It's just that you're more prepared for those things now. And I think the same can be said for what we're trying to do, challenging ourselves from a physical standpoint with things like the ultra. Like the only rationale you can give yourself.
Just explain that briefly for people listening.
Well, so we signed up to. I'm actually doing a couple, but we signed up to a 271k ultra through the Alps. We're recording this in December, and this run is going to be in 9 months' time in September. So myself, Jenz, a good friend of ours called Miles, and obviously Chad, we're going to be running through the Alps. 271k, I think over 6 days, so roughly a marathon plus elevation every day. None of us are ultra runners. A couple of us have done marathons before. Jenz has only done a half. But the point here is that, like, you do those things because you want to try and find how can you push that limit that little bit further. And the lessons that we will learn up on that mountain will then be able to thread into what we do with our relationships, with our business, in our professional lives. So I think the sort of people we are, and it's very evident from probably this podcast and what it's named, the sort of people that we are, you always need to look for that challenge. Because if you're not, like I said at the start, if you're not growing, then every day that you've got is a day closer to your death. I want every day that I've got to be a day where I can challenge myself further physically and mentally.
Fantastic. So just to move on to something a little bit different, emotion kills, data builds. So this is obviously very relevant for the business owner. So maybe just talk about that to start with. What does that mean to you, and what have you seen in the business owners that you're coaching that has brought that quote to life?
So that particular quote, emotion kills, data builds, it actually goes through everything, right? So, for example, if we go back to, I don't know, beginning of this year, beginning of 2023, Jenz weighing in at 114 kilos, the emotion around, I'm doing all the right things, I'm training, whatever, but it's not like working. Like, why is it not working? And it got to a point, something just clicked, and I was like, this is not who I am. Like, fucking stack this properly. And the biggest thing was make the data so fucking clear that there's no room for nuance. So I lent into tracking calories meticulously eating everything, controlling everything that I've made or me and my wife have made, but get enough data to remove emotion and to remove like overwhelming thought, or like, is there something wrong here? Like, what's the reasons for it? What are the justifications? There's no justification. Here's the proof. Here's the science. Here's the data. And, it significantly changed my physique, my athleticism, everything. To bounce that into business, it's the same thing. If you're sitting there going, I think I'm doing all the right things, I'm trying really hard, I'm working really hard, and there's no proof to suggest that, then it's all bullshit. Get rid of the bullshit to go, here's the empirical data based on where are you spending your time, who are you spending your time, where are you spending your money, and what is that resulting in? If it's not resulting in a result, then you've got to work backwards and go, what variables need to change that I can control the outcome.
Yeah, I think the reference point was in business, but as Jen said, I think it can be applied to anything. Your nutrition, your training, you don't hit that lift you thought you were going to hit on a particular training day, and you all of a sudden you think you're fucking weak. Like it's a short-term mindset. It could be your sleep, it could be anything. Yeah, but if you're tracking your workouts and you're on that program, then you have reference points to suggest that if I zoom out a little bit, okay, actually it's been trending up for the last 4 weeks. Today I'm just a little bit more fatigued, or that stress before I came into the gym has impacted my ability to lift. So I think where possible, not to get paralyzed by the data, which a lot of people can sometimes get, is to use the data to give you a reference point as to what your next decision should be, and just to make sure that you are filtering through your efforts and making sure that they're aligned in the right places.
So obviously we talked about kind of like the individual that maybe has a goal and doesn't know where to start, or all those things. I think this is really useful for that, in terms of like you said, tracking the steps back. What have I done right? What have I done wrong? And actually, what's that led to? In terms of where you guys are at now, how often are you reflecting on what you've done in that sense? Is it weekly? Is it daily? Is it every action you take? What's the reflection points there?
I'm laughing because we're speaking to the man who doesn't reflect.
I don't even know what reflect.
We talked about this on episode 1 or 2, I think.
The only reflection he does is in the mirror.
Next fucking question.
I would say to Jenz, what would you tell Ollie about reflection then? Or what have you told Ollie about reflection?
Do you know what? Every now and then I'll just say to him, dude, look what we've done here. Check this. How cool is that? And he'll just be like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then carry on. So it's more like, oh, should I tell my wife? Will my wife give me a high five and be like, oh, well done, babe. That's been a good year. But in terms of the question, I think the most important thing, so most people live in one of two places, like the past and the present. So they're often dealing with like worries around the past. You got some people worrying about the future and the present, right? So they're anxious of what's to come. But actually, most people should just be in the present with a perspective of what's on the ground, and also like a bird's eye view. And the bird's eye view, based on the data, would show the trend. Everything is just a trend. So to Ollie's analogy, if everything's been trending up in terms of your lifts, and you have an off day, it's cool. Everything's been trending up. Just zoom out enough. So equally, if you're always down in the weeds and you can't tell the forest from the trees, you probably just need to zoom out enough just to kind of go, oh, do you know what? I am actually heading in the right direction. And that's what a good coach does. A good coach can almost give you guidance on the day-to-day, but give you the perspective of where you've come from and where you're going. I think when it comes to Ollie and reflection, that's probably the reason why he's so successful is, in golf, they're very particular on next job, because every shot is so precise that if you make a mistake, it's like it could throw you off. But if you just go, fine, next job, you can turn a match around quite quickly. Ollie's like that with everything. It's like next job, next job, next job. We hit a big target, big goal. Okay, sweet, next job. And I think that's actually his superpower, that and his ability to just spin multiple plates at once. Like I can spin, I've got a lot of tabs open, but yours looks like John Wright's computer, I'm sure.
Should have played golf.
So to move forward, so you mentioned it earlier, I just wanted to get your insight into it. So pay yourself first. What does that mean? Where does that come from?
Where it comes from is actually a book called Profit First, which is an alternative way of doing your accounts, where what you do is you take whatever the profits are, you take that first, you pay yourself, because most business owners get to a place where they don't have profits and they look at their business with distaste or frustration. Anyway, I've taken that analogy a little bit further to go, do you know what? We need to pay ourselves first as business owners, because once the day starts, it almost feels like the day gets taken away from you, right? You're putting out fires, you're handling things, you're dealing with issues, you're having to come up with new strategies, and you need to perform your best. One of the things that we love is we live the life of a professional athlete within rugby, but match day was only like once in a tournament or once on the weekend. For us now, match day is every fucking day, and we need to be able to perform every day. So like that needs to stack up, And our warm up for each day, so we can perform, is in the mornings when we pay ourselves first on our terms. So it's doing something hard, doing something that we want to do that's for us to be the best performer of the day.
Yeah, you've probably heard a lot of people say in the past, like, this weekend I got to fill up my cup, or you can't serve others from an empty vessel. So I think sometimes people probably wait too late, or there's just like once a week where they get that chance to pay themselves or to fill up their cup. For us, it's like microdosing every day, because the level we want to try and operate at, we need every day. Like, we need to pay ourselves first so that we can, again, maximize each day so that we can reset, hit ground zero and do it again.
So, what I'm taking from that essentially is the hardship that you'll put yourself through in terms of wanting to get better, you also counteract that with paying yourself, right? In terms of turning that hardship into, or the prep before that hardship, into being like, I'm doing this for myself. This is what's taking me where I need to be.
A lot of people listening probably won't be at that stage yet, but for us, like the hard stuff, if we talk about the physically hard stuff, the training, that's the conduit to be able to do all the stuff for the rest of the day. So even though in the moment it is the hard stuff, the fulfillment we get afterwards is the thing that allows us to be supercharged, then to go and take on the next 10 hours or whatever else life's going to throw at us. That's because we find sanctuary and pleasure in the training, in the physical. Maybe because of our childhoods, maybe because of rugby, maybe because we know that actually the single biggest things that are going to contribute to you being able to be fit and capable every year and the stage of your life is getting stronger and being fitter.
Yeah, it's just a different perspective, Sam, because I don't think we look at it as being hard. It's just, it is what is, and the outcome of what we can do for the rest of the day is positive. And I think, like, you know, how many people are still perplexed to think that, like, Ollie's not motivated every day to go train. I'm not motivated every day when my alarm goes off at 4:30 to go and train. But it just is what is. It is how we show up. It's how we move through the day. But the byproduct of showing up on the days you didn't feel like it is that I can perform way, way better than if I press snooze or if I didn't do what I said I was going to do.
Would that be something you would talk about as one of these points, is moving away from motivation and turning it into routine and discipline? So that on those days where you don't feel like it, you don't go, I don't have it in me today. It's just like something I need to check off the list.
So I play around with this often in my head in terms of how I would articulate this to others. Charles Poliquin he wrote a really cool blog about there's no such thing as discipline, only love. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah, it's like proper classic. So there's no such thing as discipline, only love. And it's not that you need to see it as like this discipline, like hard thing. It's like you either love the version you're trying to be or the version you are. One of the things you love more than. So if you really love the idea of being this other thing, choose love. Do that. I think when the word discipline comes up, people think it's like this, like really really hard thing, and it requires all this like inertia and mental like fortitude. I think what it is just, it kind of comes back to the zone of proximal development. So it's like where you are now in your comfort zone. If you stay there, you're not going to grow. Far too many people use this analogy when they fall off the bandwagon, that I'm an all or nothing kind of person, which is just a bullshit excuse to be like, this is why I'm not growing. But all that happens is they go too far out of what is their growth zone, which is just one step beyond where they currently are. So what are the behaviors that you need to adopt that is outside of your comfort zone, that doesn't require that much inertia to get up, right? And then you might take lessons maybe out of Atomic Habits, where it's like, okay, if you want to get used to going for a run in the morning, but right now you're not doing a run at all, it might not be necessarily go for a run every morning. Why don't you build the habits and just go for a walk every morning? Start there, right? And you just start to stack the behaviors. The intensity can increase over time, but stack the behaviors that require less motivation. And then you almost start to become more disciplined, not because discipline is what you seek, but more so the behaviors that you adopt.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is bringing someone along for the journey. I think we've made it exponentially easier for each other to help through the accountability piece to make sure that we don't let each other down. You know, the 8:30 text or WhatsApp saying, you know, meet here in the morning. So yeah, fuck yeah, I'll see you then in the morning. We'll be there anyway, but it just erases any doubt because you've got someone else holding you accountable, and I think that's the power of accountability and community and alignment in what you're trying to achieve.
And that's where the Marchon program is so sick, right? The Marchon community, because there are many people going to the gym on their own, but they're not on their own. They've got the leaderboard, they've got the guy or the gal, one up or one down on them. You're going to go and do those deadlifts next week. So if you don't go, they're going to put a score on the door and you aren't.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool. You can be in freaking South Australia training in your garage, but know that like you could hit the deadlifts before everyone else because the sun rose earlier and you're first on the board. Like how cool is that?
I think for me personally, that's one of the biggest pros of social media. The people that I follow hold me accountable to a higher standard. The people, again, that we talk about taking inspiration from, but whether it's people on the program that are going to get their workout in before us or people that are doing other things in different industries that I look up to, you can use social media to start to model your behavior and give you cues to go and do the thing that you might find you ordinarily need motivation for.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, I've heard multiple people say about your stories, Ollie, in terms of the training. When they wake up, you've already finished your thing, so it gives them a kick to be like, actually, I need to maybe wake up earlier or train a bit harder. So I think people are definitely taking value from seeing what you guys do on a daily basis.
I think that's really important though, because some people will see that and be like, oh, everyone's training, I'm not doing anything. Just take that as a cue to be like, sweet, I'm up. It's time to go. That's my gentle reminder to be like, sweet. That's your motivation kick right there.
So switching the narrative again.
Yeah, and this stuff only becomes relevant and will hit home if you're interested in the things that we are doing. Some things we don't have all figured out and we're not doing particularly well at, but the things that we are doing quite well at within the fitness space, like if you want to try and model those behaviors, like that's sometimes what it's going to have to take. Not necessarily the workout before 6 a.m., but a workout every day, 5 days a week, whatever it may be, or getting that bit of movement in. So, if this is the life or this is the physique or this is the level of success you want to try and have in sport, in business, in growing teams, in leadership, then these behaviors are something that you need to try and adopt and the standards you need to uphold.
Yeah, fantastic. So this last one I've grouped together, so let me know if they don't fit together. But forward, not straight, and act fast, think less. How do we feel about those?
Powerful.
Yeah, really powerful. You go first.
I don't know whether we'll come on to these as well, but I'll probably put into there, like, have you got always be in beta on there?
I was going to ask you at the end if there's any that I've missed off.
Yeah, so the other one we say is like always be in beta, so always be in sort of testing mode. I think it goes back to the fact that like we're very hyper aware of the fact we're not the finished article and we don't have all the answers, but in doing the work we'll try and find some answers or at least educate ourselves to a level where we can inform decisions a little bit more and we can keep moving forward. So I think, acting fast, thinking less, I think is something that we both resonate with. We want to move fast. We want to move at a cadence. It keeps us excited. It keeps us feeling as though there's purpose and meaning behind what we're doing. That's not to say that we're reckless about our, what we do. We can consult with people around us. We make decisions based on to the best of our knowledge. But you need to move fast because the world does move fast. And I think everything has been I heard earlier that we're living in a world now that probably would have been 2030 based on what happened through COVID and the digitalization of everything and AI and everything else now has been so far advanced that you have to move fast. Otherwise you get left behind. So, I think for us, speed of implementation is really key, and staying ahead of the pack is very important. So we have to test and learn always. And it goes back to what I said earlier. It's like if you think you're the finished article, then beyond that is just decline, right? When you hit maturation, beyond that is then just like aging and then death. But if you feel as though there's always something better to be had, whether it's in your physique, in getting stronger, in the business idea you had, in the product that you've created, like if you can iterate and make it better and you can continually have that mindset, then again, you're in the infinite game where the thing that you're doing will now last generations rather than just last a couple of years.
I think that act fast, think less is also down to the fact that so many people talk shit about the thing that they're going to do, the idea that they have, but it's just procrastination at its finest. And And for many, it's just self-harm at its finest, right? So the time that you take to think about a thing, we've already done it 5 times over. So it's about just moving faster, because you learn from that. So one of the points there is apply, learn, iterate. So our favorite thing to do is always iterate. The team get frustrated because you're like, we just built this website. Cool, it's great, but we've got to iterate. We've got to do it again, right? Because we want to keep learning. We want to keep iterating. Forward, not straight, it's actually pulled out of the PFCA education system, where as a coach, the mediocre coaches make it very clear, like almost a beeline from A to B for the client to get to their goals. And it's never just a straight beeline. It's going to veer slightly up and down towards said endeavor. But what's really important is that you just take one step at a time. You effectively march on. And as long as you're moving forwards, it doesn't necessarily need to be straight, but you're moving closer to where you're trying to go. And that's what that's about.
So the last point, I wanted to ask you individually. So Jenz, Ollie, whoever wants to take it first. What is one lesson in business that you've learned that someone would find useful in life?
Do you want me to go first? Fuck, I knew you'd say that. There's loads of lessons, but I think the best lesson would be, I think the best lesson for me, I've really enjoyed growing the team of people that we have. Like I said, I think we have a team of absolute killers in everything that we do. So I think the biggest lesson has been like not feeling as though I've got all the answers and that I should be doing, everything. And then that comes from a place of knowing that like people are the glue that hold everything together in your company. And the more you can be always on with your recruitment, and the more you can be a good fucking leader and build a brand that people want to come and work for, that will amplify and accelerate your business quicker than anything you could do as an individual.
I would say have a fucking good product. I would say if your product's shit, don't try sell it, but make a good product and then learn how to sell it. Build the team around it. Get people who are better than you around you. Mentorship is one of the best things you could do, and this is not related to gym owners or whatever. This is like find someone who's been there, done that, that you can learn from, whether it's formally or informally. But if you're going to ask for advice, you better fucking do it, and then you better show gratitude as well. But it's all about perfecting the product. Like Marchon was built on the highest level of quality of coaching, and it's because of that it's been able to extend outwards. Right? It's classy, it's professional, it's best in class, and then everything else stacks up.
And is there any other points from that talk or in general that we've missed that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Just remember that whatever your narrative is today, it doesn't have to be the same narrative tomorrow. Every new day is a new chance to for rebirth, for reinventing yourself, and for acting more in line of the things that you truly value. So if you see every new day as a new opportunity, then life is full of endless opportunity, and you get to pay yourself first. You get to do some things that are really cool. As long as you can look at each day as like a little bit scared, and that you really need to step up to be your best in order to overcome, then life becomes extremely fun. And if you can do that with really cool people that align with the same values as you, then it makes it just this really cool journey.
I think everything we spoke about is all around the mindset piece, right, and how you view the world. And I think if you don't view the world quite how you want to view the world, or yourself within the world, how you want to view yourself, then adopt some of the things that we've spoke about, and you can keep iterating every day, and you can A and B test different things that you're doing, whether it be with your nutrition, your training, the way you organize your day, the way you communicate with certain people. until you find a place where you're gathering some momentum. And when you find the momentum, go as fast as you can until the momentum begins to slow down. That might be then when you need to think about a different strategy and test and learn something else. But I think if you genuinely want to go out into the world and get get what you deserve, like, it has to be proactive, and you've got to live each day on the front foot and get after it.